issue. The data centers are another significant issue. This is from an article written in 2015, looking at past history and forward projections of the electricity demand for wireless, ICTs and communications, green is data centers, and red is production of the equipment. But this was before AI really took off. And so artificial intelligence is putting huge demands on it. The blockchain technology is very sad. The dominant one is still cryptocurrency, which they said you have to have proof of work in order to create value, because there's no. Okay. So what proof of work is, you give them a silly math problem and you spend many, many cycles to solve it. It's useless, but it's a huge consumer of electricity, got to be as much as a third of the electricity being used in some places in the US. It's crazy. Okay, so what has happened? So this is a plot from The Economist, and looking at machine learning, and ChatGPT uses about 1.8 trillion parameters, and ChatGPT-5 is going to tens of trillion parameters per training session that take days. And this is the number of flops, or 21 million petaflops. Next generation order of magnitude higher. And so Meta is now planning a data center that will spend CW 2 gigawatts and 30 billion petaflops. Okay, and it's driving up electricity prices around the United States. So what can you do? Well, the algorithms, a lot of work in making the algorithms more efficient, that they don't have to be huge, can be more specialized, things like that. There's a lot of work in making the chips more efficient. So this is the number of GPU flops per second per dollar on a logarithmic scale. So as that goes up, this is continuing. Sounds really good. Well, when will we see general artificial intelligence? Artificial general intelligence, I guess is what it's called. Don't really know. Right now, the ChatGPT 4 and 5 are mostly interpolation. They're good precursor to Google search because they can read the literature, and the good ones now give you references, and they're not hallucinatory references. Oh, very good. So I use ChatGPT every day, several times a day now. I'm preparing this talk many times, okay? However, let me give you something more interesting. If you look at a 4-year-old toddler, suppose they have one parent speaks one language, another parent speaks another language. They're both not in the United States, and if they're rich, they may have a nanny that speaks a third language. By 4 years old, this toddler speaks perfect 3 languages, can easily translate for the parents and everything, and they can tell the difference between cats and dogs. The food intake is such that they only need 70 watts of power, average, of which half goes to their brain. And here's a young person doing physics experiments. Things fall down, you throw something on the wall, watches. Okay, and I also have to say that she is the childless cat lady. Just terrible. Okay. Okay, again, materials and resources need. Okay, so we get batteries, very exciting batteries. Maybe hydrogen, maybe not. There will be some place for hydrogen for sure, but we still need compact turn-on sources because not every country is blessed with the renewables that the United States is. If you're Japan, if you're South Korea, if you're Taiwan, you're mountainous area, deep offshore. And deep offshore costs a lot, okay? And so then if you look at this, whether you're 80% or 60% or 20%, Taiwan could be at 10% renewables, unless they can go deep offshore, maybe 15%. You will need some turn-on system no matter what. And so there's the choice. There's coal, there's natural gas, but you've got to sequester the carbon, and there's fission or with spent fuel disposal, and there's fusion as well. Okay, so what are the issues about nuclear? Well, the fear of radiation. the ability to build reactors on time, on budget, and spent fuel disposal. Let me talk about these things. If you look at the death rates based on energy production per terawatt hour, brown coal is the worst. Most of the deaths are associated with small particulate matter, a little bit of mercury and other stuff. SOx and NOx scrubbers are effective now. Mercury has to be retrofitted, but the Trump administration is trying to get rid of that requirement. Then coal, then oil, biomass burning, wood chips. These are deaths per terawatt hour. There's hydropower. Why is it dangerous? Because dams break. And so where's nuclear? Nuclear is down here. And so it's 1,000 times safer than coal and 100 times safer than burning wood pellets in Denmark because of the particulate matter especially. So, but that isn't going to give people, they're still going to be afraid of radiation, so I'm going around. So, okay, look, radiation occurs naturally in the food you eat. It's not because of H-bomb testing, it's because of what became and formed our solar system, either a neutron star or supernova, or whatever did it, and these things have radioactive. And so because of that, people have introduced a new measure of radiation. It's called the BED, or banana equivalent dose, how much radiation you get from eating one banana. I gave a talk in South Korea and looked up that a cup of cooked bok choy is the same as a banana, so you don't even have to change the acronym. Bok choy equivalent dose. But it's not only in bananas, it's in just about anything. Does the FDA know about this? Yes. Do they say you should stop eating spinach or vegetables or anything, or bananas? No. Right? Because it's not relevant to your health. The change in background radiation, depending on what you eat and where you live, it's mostly in the rocks, not the altitude, varies by a factor of 5, but no incidence change in cancers. Why? Because we know that your systems have DNA repair mechanisms. The ionizing radiation can make defects, can cause mutations, but there are enzymes that go up and down looking for that and say, oops, if it's a defect, it's a misfit, it bulges out a little, they excise that, they filled it in. And so it's actually, but the radiation levels are linear extrapolations from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, down to very, very low levels. There's data of a threshold effect, in which nothing. So then it goes linearly when you're at high exposure. If you work for Korean Airlines and fly over the North Pole to Boston, New York, you go over where the magnetic field goes like this, so you get pretty high doses. Not quite as high as nuclear reactor workers, but again, no evidence that these people over 30-year careers or 40-year careers. Okay, so there's a level. Okay, so hopefully, how do you tell people continue to eat your spinach and bananas, and it's not going to affect your health? How do you build things on time, on budget? The cost of nuclear reactors went up 8-fold in the United States since the 70s after 3 Mile Island. But it turns out all big projects had cost overruns. You're in Boston, so that's big digging. And so there's actually a book on how big things get done, and over 90% of them come on over budget, over schedule, or both. And so there are things that one can do, but we have to remember. We did build 2 nuclear reactors recently in the United States, southern Edison, in the southeast. The first one came a factor of 5 over budget. There were 2 of them. The next one came a factor of 2 under budget. Because we forgot how to build nuclear reactors, but after building one, the second one was okay. And so I don't know if we can relearn how to do this. Korea is, every time they build a reactor in South Korea, the price goes down. Okay, so another new kid on the block is the possibility of small modular reactors. This is a cartoon I found on the web. This is the size of a person. This is BMW new scale, blah, blah, blah. This is supposed to be the size of the car, but the Volkswagen seems to be as small as person. So maybe it's a giant basketball player, I don't know. But here's the good thing about these reactors. If you can build them in a factory, It's much more controlled conditions. You can ship on a flatbed truck. There's something also nice about some of the technologies, that the radiation containment is in the fuel pellet themselves, so you have shells of hard ceramic, and then the whole reactor, and they should be designed to be walkaway safe, as the big ones. Walkaway safe is used complete control of everything, as in no water, no cooling water, no electricity, no control, nothing. It won't melt down. You can build, and it's easy. You just engineer so it has enough heat inertia, so it doesn't melt. So that's an issue, and there are now people thinking, you know, after 60, 80-year life. The new large scale, they're on the drawing board, they want 80-year life. The first generation of the US reactors were 40-year. Most of them will be relicensed another 20 years because it's very conservative design. But 80-year would be even better, because and then you can take all this stuff and you can put it down a borehole. Big borehole this big, and the whole thing goes down, and then it goes horizontally, down kilometers, horizontally kilometers. That's important that you have this, because right now the United States has problem. We have an out-of-date Nuclear Waste Act. It says this has to be recoverable. There's no economic reason unless you have fast neutron reactors, which we probably won't have. And you can't ship, it's hard to ship across state lines. They don't, you know, states, their pass-through states won't allow that. And so that's another problem. The military, of course, we have nuclear stuff, we ship across state lines. The solution's really easy. We don't tell people. You cannot do this with a utility company. Okay, so anyway, so borehole could revolutionize things because it opens up access to many, many more sites. The Yucca Mountain site was a terrible scientific choice. It was known in the Bush administration. I was friends with the secretary and deputy secretary, and they said, they started drilling and water started dripping. He said, we know, because we did some of the hydrology at LBNL. I said, what are you going to do about it? I said, well, the plan is to put a big titanium shield that costs another couple $2 billion above Yucca Mountain. And they said, yeah, but nothing humans have built has lasted for 10,000 years. And the Supreme Court ruling says, if science says it should be 1 million years. So the titanium shield won't last 10,000 years. Okay, that's just my prejudice, because nothing we make lasts that long. But it was nuts. But it became political football. There, for a time there was no power in Nevada, then there was immense power, and so. But it was a really bad site, and so we have to do things in a rational way. Sweden and Finland have figured out how to do this, and they got areas in the country bidding on sites because they trust the government enough that they say we won't have a leak. Okay, that's also important. You got to trust your government. Okay, fusion. Okay, so we have magnetic fusion. There's ITER, which is way over budget. There are smaller, compact ones, better high TC conductors and things like that. There's a thing called the Stellarator, which looks like a Frank Gehry sculpture of a very twisted magnetic field. That's great because they can actually run CW. And Germany made, in Bosstein, its great accelerator, turned on and worked within a year after they built it. It required micron precision. It's great stuff. It won't become commercial until we solve a problem. The neutrons, when they hit the whatever vacuum chamber or a sacrificial layer, they move the atoms around. And in the flux of a nuclear reactor, maybe 100 times per year, and there's alpha decay. And so you've got stuff that used to be polycrystalline turning into kind of cheesy stuff with Swiss holes in it from the helium. So the stuff falls apart. And the plan for a commercial magnetic is you have some sacrificial layer, but it becomes radioactive, short-term radioactive, not long-term, so it's not a 10,000 million year problem, but it's a 100-year problem, and it's very hot. And so you've got to get it in a robot, you've got to take it out, you've got to put it in. And so, okay, big breakthrough, first breakthrough in laser fusion at Livermore. So X-rays come in, they create, light, UV light comes in, it hits on a gold hologram, makes X-rays. The X-rays then implode a small pellet. It used to be a very homogeneous silicon dioxide pellet, but it wasn't good enough and it was too high Z, so then they have a diamond shell. But it's suspended in the middle of this, held by a polymer film of 50 angstroms. And it has to be kind of hand carried, and when it's hand carried, they lose half of it just in hand carrying. Okay, so then the commercial guys said, well, we need to shoot maybe 10 of these per second in many meters per second in this big chamber that has to be filled with gas, because you have to have the gas there to stop the debris, you know, going, okay? So it's, and so, but the laser guys who were pushing it said, well, we figured, I think we can still get him in the hole and everything. And so that doesn't look like it. And so I know I'm good friends with the guy who made this. Omar Hurricane made it work. He got a Lawrence medal, and I talked to him a lot about that. And so the estimate of commercial avoid 30 years, but you have to solve the materials problem, and you might have to solve the target problem, so never. However, here's hope. About a month ago, I met a friend of mine, Shizi Nakamura. He shared the Nobel Prize in physics for inventing the blue LED using gallium nitride. And he said, I'm now working on fusion. He said, well, look, laser fusion. I said, oh, okay, I'm good friends with Omar. We had a sidebar chat for an hour. I said, what about this, what about this? And he said, no. And so after that, I said, well, you got to get rid of the hologram. He said, you can control it well enough. It's just direct laser. And you can make the systems efficient and everything. And so I came over and I said, there's hope. Maybe in 20 years. Because you can make the chamber big enough so the neutron damage is less of a problem. You can't do that for magnetic fusion. So maybe, but don't hold your breath. Okay, agricultural revolution. There were several agricultural revolutions. The first agricultural revolution is the domestication of plants and animals. Second, agriculture and things, inventing yeast and how to ferment alcohol. The second agricultural revolution was an infrastructure revolution, started in England, made better roads, infrastructure, trading, and third agricultural revolution were two things. One was the ability to make nitrogen-based fertilizers from beginning nitrogen, a thing called the Haber-Bosch process, which Fritz Haber got the Nobel Prize in 1918. Before this, he was specifically trying to do this, but it was the Haber-Bosch process, so in 1931, they gave the Bosch for the Haber-Bosch process. They made up an excuse, high temperature, high pressure catalysis, which was the Haber-Bosch process, okay? Boyle got a Nobel Prize for crossbreeding plants, and so you have standard wheat and you have wheat kernels that could, they were so heavy that the plant would fall down due to gravity, so you had to breed dwarf plants that had thicker stalks so it would stay up. You could have fertilizer, rapid growth spurts, all that stuff. Really a well-deserved Nobel Prize. These two inventions did something dramatic. This is a time from 1961 to 2021